as even the atheists used to say, the dumb man's thing. Why? Because only dumb people follow religion. Because if you're truly intelligent, you don't need it. And when people see things that don't make sense in religion, they right away want to take that and say that, you see, that's part of how religion is something that is this and that and so on and so forth. I ask you a question, Ahibba. When the Athan time comes in, and we know that we're still moving towards the longest day of the year, June 24th or 5th, and the Athan time comes in at 12:01, 1:01 pardon me, 1:02, and we're supposed to start the Salah at 1:05. Are you going to have enough time to say the first Adhan and then to say the second Adhan? And not only that, but in the way that many of us have also understood, as if you're supposed to make 4 rak'at sunnah between the 2 Adhans. Some of you as adults may look at that and say, look, you're not making any sense, Imam. Yes, we need to do whatever we have to do and so on and so forth, but understand something. Please nobody take this the wrong way. I'm here for the community as a whole. But when I have a target audience, my real goal and aspiration is to reach the youth. Because those of you, alhamdulillah, are older and have a fixed mind and are, whoever you are in your deen, inshallah nothing changes you. But the concern is for our youth. And our youth are raised in a different setting, within a different context than you are. And if religion does not make sense, and wallahi Islam makes sense, but if you can apply it correctly, if Islam does not make sense, we are doing a disservice to our kids. Do we want to bring them to Islam, or do we want to push them away from Islam? If we want to bring them to Islam, we've got to make sure that we're following the Sunnah as it was meant to be. Honest to God, I do not believe that Uthman was aware of the circumstances and the situation today that he would say, no, still call that first event. He was not ignorant. Waliyadu billah. You're talking about from the greatest of the Sahaba, from the eldest of them, from the first to embrace Islam. But I'll tell you something, because I know this forum is not longer. After Maghrib tonight, inshallah, we're going to talk about this in more detail. What I want is for those of our brothers who really have something to say, to come tonight and talk. Not to fight, not to argue, but to talk. Because our purpose has always been to teach Islam through the Book of Allah and the authentic Sunnah of His Messenger. So that this way, inshallah, we can practice Islam correctly and be doing ourselves a service and be doing a service to our community. فاتقوا الله يا عباد الله وتوبوا إليه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أحبة, a couple things that I had mentioned about the hadith that we're going to talk about, I want to point them out now. The first thing is this. I know that as Muslims, most of us have been brought up culturally as Muslims. And I'm not saying that in a bad way such that anybody should get offended. I'm not here to offend anybody. But what I'm saying is that most of us did not learn Islam because we actually studied it and we practiced things because we studied it through evidence. We do it because that's how we've learned it. We picked it up from the house, from the country and community we grew up in, etc. Some of our children, alhamdulillah, that attend Islamic school here, they're learning it through evidence, which is a blessing. Whether it's Iqra school or what they're able to get through Sunday school. Definitely what they learn in Iqra is far more because they're there 5 days a week for several hours, as opposed to in Sunday school for 4 hours. But because of this, we need to still be open to learning. And not in any way take anything offensively, such that then we allow shaitan to cause us to be angry and to close our minds and our hearts to learning, where we become stubborn and closed-minded. When we heard the adhan that was taught in the dream to both Sahaba ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, we notice how the adhan was called. And there's not a Muslim except that they should have the adhan memorized, to know how to call it as was mentioned in this hadith. But the other point that I want to call out is the second aspect, which is the iqamah. Notice how the iqamah was called. It was not called in the same way that the adhan is called, with the addition of qad qamatis salat. But the other point that I want to mention, and this is the last, is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was genuinely loved by his companions. And so when he taught them something, they never got angry with him. And they really fought themselves so that they would not resist what he was teaching them. Imagine talking about a people who came from Jahiliyyah, they're learning everything from scratch. Their dunya must have felt like, man, we knew nothing, we were like children, and he had to teach us everything. And it was actually one of the things that some of the Jews in Medina tried using to ridicule Muslims. Saying, this Prophet of yours teaches you everything. These are like children, you don't know anything. And we see that the Sahaba, they prized themselves on that. They were proud. They said, yes, he teaches us everything. He teaches us how to use the bathroom and how to be clean. They did not get angry. Imagine the example of the dream. Imagine you being in the position of Abdullah ibn Zayd or in the position of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the Prophet ﷺ says, Bilal, get up and go call the adhan. Most of us would be like, why not me? Hey, it was my dream. Not only that, but he even further clarifies why, saying, فَإِنَّهُ أَنْدَى صَوْتًا. Saying that Bilal is better in his voice, it is clearer, it is more beautiful, it is sweeter, it is more melodious, it is mashallah. None of them got offended. What I want to say to him, I am not the Prophet ﷺ. I could never be a Prophet ﷺ. I cannot even be a companion, a Sahabi with Allah Ta'ala. Wallahi, I'm probably one of the weakest of students of knowledge that exists. But that doesn't mean in any way that when I am teaching you something that is authentic, that you get upset and angry. Because in the same way of what the Prophet ﷺ did, wallahi, in my life, and I pray that Allah take my soul, and I try to live his example as best as I can, they did not get upset when the Prophet said, and if I were to select somebody for this or not select somebody for that, agree with me. Those of you that I know a bit better than others, I know something about your characteristics, your qualities. And so if I call you or upon you or select you, it's because from what I have of knowledge. Doesn't mean that you don't have it. Well, if I really don't know you, then there's no way for me to know. But otherwise, don't give me a hard time, because wallahi, life is difficult enough without us giving each other harassments and hassles. And this is true in all of our relationships as Muslims. If we had the most perfect family life, and if we had the most perfect job, and the perfect school environment, and the best of neighbors, and if everything seemed to be mashallah, we would still have enough hardships and tests in life, because that's how Allah created it. So why do we cause it for each other? There's no need. There's no need. But just to wrap it up with regards to some of those characteristics that are needed for the mu'adhin, please listen. That number one, the mu'adhin should know the adhan and the iqamah as it was mentioned authentically in that hadith. And honestly, so many times we've had people that have gone up and they've called the adhan and they've called the iqamah, and we've seen a rainbow of different things, such that subhanAllah, sometimes Allahu Akbar. Let's learn the authentic way of the adhan and the iqamah. Secondly, that we should call the adhan when the time does come in. Also to recognize that this is an act of ibadah, so everyone who's going to call it should have that intention. Not that you say anything, say, oh Allah, I'm not going to call the adhan and sincerely for you or this. No. The intention is something in your heart. You don't have to tell Allah, Allah knows. It's for you to be sure that you are sincerely doing what you're doing for Allah Azza wa Jalla. Not so that the people can say, Allah Akbar, mashallah, such a beautiful voice, or this or that, or whatever else it may be. It is between you and Allah. Also, that the pronunciation is correct. Why? Because it has to be in Arabic. So we want to make sure that the pronunciation is correct. And with that I say, brothers, understand, because in the way that some of the letters are pronounced, Arabs among Arabs you'll find that they'll pronounce things different. The cow will be pronounced check, and so on and so forth. Allahu Akbar, for example, that's one of the things, right? Also, that it is in its correct order. And also that it is continuous, meaning that the pause in between is enough for a person to catch their breath, etc., to give time for the people who are listening to repeat it. And that's important. These are all from the fiqh of the adhan. And the last point that we'll mention is that the voice is the right voice belonging to the right person who has the knowledge. And the way that Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu arda, that he had a clear, crisp, loud, yet beautiful voice. And part of this is not that the person says the adhan and elongates things so much such that you don't know what the beginning was as regards the end because it was so long. That things should be given its due justice. And inshallah ta'ala, in doing so, we can establish the adhan of Bilal as it was known, because he was the main mu'adhin of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and in doing so be from his blessed ummah, following his blessed example. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barak ala abdika al-Mustafa wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. Allahumma arda anna bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma wafiqna lima tuhib wa tarda. اللهم جنبنا الفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن. اللهم نقي وصفي قلوبنا يا أرحم الراحمين يا سميع يا قدوس. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Ya Allah, we ask you that you also have mercy upon our brother Muharram, who passed away in Bosnia. Allah have mercy upon him, upon all of our brothers and sisters that are dying throughout the lands, and those that are being killed and die as martyrs. Allahumma ameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.